3 webinars. 8.2 is live as of today. We're going to start by just jumping into one of the plugins that was offered on Wednesday. We're going to circle back to a bit more about like what's new in 8.2 from an overview, especially in the developer, because there's quite a few enhancements in the developer. Then on Friday, we're excited to launch a new extension for Servoy, and in fact, it's compatible with 8.1 and 8.2. It's a new security multi-tenancy module. So it's going to be a busy week, but we'll try to keep these webinars to 30 minutes as usual. So let's jump into all about the Client Manager plugin. Basically, I'm going to go through a few demos first. This plugin adds the ability to send messages between clients on a very generic level. So of course, the obvious example would be a chat example, although that's maybe not the best business case or use case for a business. So we'll do another more sort of involved example that involves chat integrated with a CRM or something. The other side of this component is the ability to manage the connected clients. And so this was already offered in the maintenance plugin, if any of you are familiar with that. However, that was only available during solution import and maintenance mode. So this makes that portion available at any runtime. And we'll get to see an example of what that looks like. Then I'll jump back and do a quick overview of what we saw with some slides and a bit of how-tos, so you can see, the condensed version, and we can discuss, possible use cases. So let's get right to it. The first demo I have up here is I have two, here we go, side-by-side windows for just a simple chat example. And this was what I also demoed at Servoy World in the little preview. So for those of you that saw that, this will be a bit of a review. But just to show you sort of the basics of the plugin, I'm going to enter a username for each one of these chat channels. I'll be very creative here and sign in as Sean1 and Sean2. So now as I start chatting, you can see the messages going back and forth, and this is broadcast. So you can see from the source on the left, it's broadcast to the right, and I can go back and forth. Pretty simple. We can jump in and look at the code here just to get an overview of how it works. Let me activate this solution here. I had the wrong solution active. And it is going to be this chat example here. So what happens on the first show of this form, if we jump into the event handler for that, is that we first capture the username because we need that to be, to chat under a identified user to send messages. Then I initialize the broadcaster. I call broadcaster destroy. We'll get back to that because that's actually removing from the chat if we were already added. But the one I want you to focus on is right here, where we call the Client Manager plugin and we call the get broadcaster method. And that takes 3 arguments. One is the username. So now I'm getting a hook to be able to broadcast to a channel. So I need to provide the username that I'm going to use. The second argument is the name of the channel. This is what I had demoed at Servoy World, so it was called conference channel, and at the end everyone could sign on and chat on the conference channel. But I just have a constant there, and it's set to be Servoy World. Then finally you pass in a callback method to receive the broadcast. So this I'm providing a reference to a function here, and your callback method that you provide when you initialize that broadcaster is really going to take 2 arguments. One is the username, so that's the user that's posting to that channel, and then the message or the payload. And so that's a simple string, although if you're doing a more complex chat scenario, it might be not a message from a person to a person, but it could be like a payload object, like serialized JavaScript or something. So that's That's what we do when we receive it. And in this case, I'm just printing it out to a little chat log variable that shows what's going on with a bit of HTML. And that's why you see here that it's sort of formatted and showing who said what and the users in bold. So that's the very simple example. We get a broadcaster for a name channel and under a given username, and then we can both post and receive messages on that channel. And that's the basics for it. The next example that I would show you, maybe I can just bring this up right here, would be, it will be the chat support server. And let me use my other window here and bring up chat, for example, client. Oops. Yes, chat support client. Those are good. I need to call Evo and buy some licenses apparently because I'm getting the welcome to the community edition. I'm going to shrink these down a bit so that it's a bit more visible because I have to do a bit of scrolling. So again, I'm going to sign in with a username. Now the scenario here is that rather than just a chat back and forth between users, because why would we build that? We could already get that with Slack or Skype or whatever. The example that I want to use here is that I have, let's say, a support system, maybe an interdepartmental, and I have thousands of users, and I have a customer service rep on the phone, and they're looking at an order with a customer, and they need to work with a tech support person, and maybe they just need to submit like a request for support from the tech support person around a given case ID or a given order number or something like that. So that's the scenario here, a bit more of like a real world business example. So I'm going to first sign in as the support tech. I'll call it support 1 on the left side, and over here I'll call it client 1, the sign in on the right side. Okay, so client 1 on the right side is maybe finding a case or an order, and they're on the phone, and they decide they want to flag for support or request for support. So I'm going to hit this button here, and you can see that it opens up a chat channel over here. But what I also did is I broadcast over to the left screen here that I am now requesting. So I have a list of open cases here. If I were to add another client, for the same one, I'm using a server in the UK, so there's a bit of a latency here to get it started. There we go. So I'm going to call this client 2. And I'm on a different order here. I'm going to request support for this one as well. So now I have 2 users in 2 locations. Let's say I have client 1 and client 2, and they've both requested support. I'm going to also add another tech support person. So let me just copy the URL here. Just one moment. All right, well, that's loading what I can do. I don't know what's going on there. Well, we can do it with 1. It's not a big deal. Is I can come over here, and as a tech support person, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to help this person here, so I'm going to select it, and it selects the record. Then I'm going to say begin support, and then I could start chatting with them, say, how can I help? And as I enter that, you can see now that it goes to this user here, and you know, they could say fix the shipper, I don't know. And then you can see that it comes back over here, and let's say I change the shipper. Servoy, of course, does data broadcasting, so you can see that was updated over here. And then maybe from the client, we're going to close the support case. So, you know, did it work? And this person says yes, and then maybe they close the support. Now, what you'll see is that that removes the case from the list of open cases that the support person was working on. Did this one ever come up? I don't know what happened there, so I'll just close that. We'll just do this with one person and support over here. So I could switch over to this other client that's running and say, okay, I'm going to start working on that one as well. So this way we can have distributed users working in a complex application, and there's a bit of client-to-client messaging. Now, Servoy has data broadcasting built in for data changes, but maybe this is a scenario where we're not really changing data. We don't have a table that's being updated and issuing data broadcasts. And this is a way to broadcast between clients and start chatting about a record or something. So that's the more complex example. I hope it makes sense from a use case point of view. Let's take a little look at the source code. So I have the first form up here, orders chat. This is the forms JavaScript file. This was the client that had requested support. So when they clicked that button and asked for support, it was calling this method here, request support. So what I've done here is set up two broadcast channels, a main channel, and then I'm creating a new channel to then do the chat around a specific order. So the first channel notifies anyone that's watching, anyone from the support department, that there's a new case open available to handle. But once that has been handled, then we're chatting on a sub-channel about just that specific order. So there could be hundreds or thousands of channels open for specific things, and a main channel for delegating, if you will. So get main channel, which I do here, is basically a lazy load thing where it creates it if it doesn't already exist. Again, this is the same method, the get broadcaster with the username, the channel name, and the callback. So the channel name here is just a constant for the main support channel. Once we get that, we broadcast this message, and this is a bit different than the simple example, because here's like a real business case where it's going to be a payload, a complex payload, not just a hi, how you're doing chat message. So this contains some serialized JavaScript which has the order ID and what the status is. So we can see that a new order came in because the status went to open. So I'm basically saying I need some support. This is the order ID. I'm opening a ticket, something like that, and it goes to open. So then I open up, as a client, I open up a sub-channel, and this is just a convention where it's going to be the main support channel, colon, and then the order ID. And then I get a broadcaster to listen and to send to. So I have another channel I call support channel, and I have a callback for that, which then prints the chat. So now I've created a main channel to issue the request, and then I create the sub channel to where the rest of the chat gets delegated to. If we go over to the, I think I actually have to switch the active solution here. I didn't have these all in one module. If I go over to the chat support server, and I open this in the script editor, bring up the outline. So you can see that I have a main channel, which I initialize down here. And I get, once it's initialized, I have to get the receive one here. That's on the sub chat. Here it is. So on my main channel, the callback that I provide when I initialize that is this one here, and this is where I'm looking if it's if the status was open. Then I won't get into the details of this one, but I'm keeping an array of open cases, and that's a value list and all that stuff. But essentially, if the status was open, I'm consuming that payload and checking the status here. Then I add it to the list of cases. If the case was assigned to another support person or it was closed, then I'm going to remove it from my list of cases. So the moment that someone else grabs that case, it disappears from my view. So it's also broadcasting from support person to support person about who's assigned to which cases. So you could see that there could be a complex tree of channels that are opening and closing all the time. So that basically just sets the value list items, which is what happens down here. The next thing that happens if I do want to decide to help on one of those cases is to assign the case. And that was this method. So when I click the case, I select or I hit the button to start supporting that case. Then first I broadcast to everyone else that, hey, I'm gonna take this case. So they all remove it from their list of open cases, and then I open up also a sub channel with the same convention as was done with the client, and now I'm free to start chatting on there, and everything in the chat window is the same as the simple example. So I know it's a lot of code and it's more of a complex example, but just to summarize is that we created a main channel to talk about which cases are open and which cases are being handled, and then every case has its own sub channel where an individual support tech and an individual customer service tech or someone would then communicate about a single thread, single order or something. So that's the more complex chat example. I said I would do one more demo here.
Hey, Sean, before you move on, there is one question related to this. The question is, can you have the two supports opened in Server at the same time? And I think what he's asking is, can you have two channels of chat open at the same time in the client?
Okay, yeah, I get the question. So yeah, you can have as many chat channels as you want. So even in this example, both the client support and the right side one here, I was just calling it the chat client, and the left side, the support server, the support tech, are both listening and chatting on two channels. One is the main channel, which says what's available, and the second one is a sub channel. But this particular person could be supporting, dozens of open, chat cases. While they wait for someone to respond, they'll go to the other one, and so they really could be listening on, dozens of different sub channels. So it really is a dedicated channel that you can use, and you can use as many as you want per client. You can have as many clients as you want talking on one channel or listening on one channel. So the final example that I'll show is what I'll do is I'll open another window, I think is the best way to visualize this. And we'll do the client manager example. And this is the other component of the client manager plugin. I think I'm running out of licenses because I didn't plug in demo licenses. Yeah, I've hit my limit. What I'll do is I'll close a couple of these. Unfortunately, that's what I wanted to show with this one. So a bit of a, maybe I can get one up now. There we go. Okay. So what I have here is the client manager plugin has another component to show connected clients and what you can do with them. And this is, similar to what you would do on the server admin, what I was just doing over here, except you could embed this in a user interface. So that's the key difference. So I'm showing here a list of clients, and as I select one, it shows me the information, the IP address, the host name, the unique ID, when they logged in, and also what solution is open. So basically everything you could get from the Servoy admin page. So you can see that the solution is changing here. Everything else is basically the same except for the times. I also tried to do a geolocation on the IP address with a Google Map component. Something with that wasn't working. I was trying to add that at the last minute to make it look a bit nicer. That's quite easy to do. You just send a request to a web service and it'll give you back a location for a lat long for an IP address. We have a better example of that on Friday when we talk about security. Anyway, so what I could do is take one of these clients and maybe send a message like server will shut down in 5 minutes, and then send. And you can see that immediately it switched over to the other client that I had up, and it's giving me the notification direct to the user interface. So just like if you send a message from the app server administration page. If I go back here, I could then follow through on that and say shut down, and it'll say, you sure you want to shut down this client? I say okay, and then I see the refresh list. There's one fewer clients there, and back here you can see that the page has expired. So so it closed that client. So you can message clients, you can shut down a single client, you can also send a message to all clients, and you can shut down all clients at once if you want to. So if you're doing some maybe some import hook that's doing some maintenance, and while the import hook is running, you want to send a message and then shut them down, or maybe you're going through and someone says they're stuck, and you want to have an application to manage a server and they're stuck, and you want to go ahead and kill their session for them so that they could log in again, something like that. That's the final component to the plugin. I'll just go through quickly and overview what we looked at. So the primary functions of the Client Manager plugin are to broadcast messages on a channel, to listen to messages on a channel, to get the information about connected clients, and with that information you can send messages direct, like straight to the UI to those clients, and you can also shut them down remotely. That's pretty much it. To broadcast a message, you got to get what's called a broadcaster. So you call get broadcaster on the plugin. You have to provide 3 things: a username, so that's the name you want to broadcast under, the channel that you want to broadcast to, and the callback function to receive messages that are broadcast on that same channel. So you would create one broadcaster for every channel that you're interested in. When you have a broadcaster that you want to send a message on, you just call send message, and you pass in a string. Now that could be a hi, how are you doing message, or it could be serialized JavaScript. So for that, use the JSON helper class to stringify some objects. And that's what we did in the more complex example where it had the order ID and a status embedded in it when it was broadcasting to the main channel. When you receive a message, you get that message, that payload. You get the payload. First, you get the username that sent the message, and then you get the payload as a string. And again, you would parse that. You do the JSON.parse, the inverse of the stringify, if it was serialized JavaScript to read it back. For the client information, it's pretty straightforward. Get connected clients gets you an array of client information objects, and on those objects you can call get host name, get host address. I didn't show the code for that, but if you were to look in developer here on the client manager example form, I can show it right down here. So when it's loading the clients, it's calling get connected clients, and it's building a value list for me to select from, but it's storing that, and then when I select a client, it's calling this load client, and it's just getting all that stuff straight from the client object. All those get methods is how I put them in form variables to show it. So that's pretty much how you get the client info. And then when you want to send a message, same thing. You just send message, you give it the client ID, or all clients, and it goes to everyone. Same for shutdown. You want to shut down a client, you give it a client ID. If you want to shut down all clients, you just call it once and it works. Any other questions, Steve?
No, just overflowing praise at what a great example this was. I am going to be posting right now in the chat area the link to the forum post that contains the links to download Servoy 8.2, to register for seminars, see the release notes, the bug fixes, all that good stuff. Thanks to Johan for posting that.